Today being a historic day, not just because why we are over here or I am meeting for the first time with Tejasvi, it's because of the Chandrayaan getting safe landing. That's what our prayer to the nation and things are. We'll begin with the activity now, the fireside chat. So as the pandemic resides, new crises come to the forefront, which is business grapple with shifts in consumer preferences, instant gratification, supply chain disruption, digital adoption, which is leading to data privacy, and various risks associated to manage it, which has an impact on emerging data technologies that hold both promise and peril. Digital innovation is key, and pragmatic transformation is the name of the game. More is being asked to the data and the business leaders nowadays. In this fireside chat, we have Mr. Tejasvi, who is a data leader, privacy officer, and I also came to know he is also a best author of 2 books on data management and governance perspective. We would be sharing our views to discuss on data management, growing reliance on how to make better decisions, being regulatory compliant on the various privacy laws and data breaches, and cloud computing. So before I put fire to chat with Mr. Tejasvi, I would like to understand from the lovely audience, whoever are over here as of now, to show the question to the answer by showing their hands. So data is the new oil, and we have to consider, if we have to consider how the return on investment, what does the audience feel among the 4 options, which is critical domain to focus upon? A, data management. B, cloud computing and risk management. C, data privacy and regulatory compliant. And D, all of the above. So if I have to say D, how many of us agree to D? Only 2, 3, 4, 5. So how many agree to A, B, C, one of them? So data privacy and regulatory compliant, risk management. Okay. So risk management, which is B, and we have most of the people saying all of the above. So here we go with Mr. Tejasvi. We have got the understanding from what our lovely audience has to say. So the first question to you is, how do you perceive the domain of data management, cloud computing, digital, and managing the risk for data privacy to be ranked for the return on investment that they provide to the organization? So what would be your view on the same?
Yeah, hi. Well, that's a great question, and some show of hands from the audience. At the outset, I think I'll go with what the audience, in fact, says. The various capability domains of data management, risk management, digital, along with the cloud computing. In fact, has to be intertwined to be able to say that we are able to give customers a seamless experience when it comes to banking or insurance. Now, where is this interplay of formal and informal relationships between each of these functions, be it data management, cloud computing, digital, as well as risk management, come into play, is aligned with the structures of the organization. So I think I had a very recent question coming in from a risk office of a bank, in fact stating there is a new law that has come into play, the privacy law. Should we have our privacy office within the second line or the first line? Now, being a data privacy officer in my erstwhile bank, in fact, I think I set up the privacy office in the first line of defense because I wanted it to be much closer to the business who in fact own the data on their balance sheets. And as we get closer to businesses and we get to know how business units like retail liabilities or cards are in fact processing data, it's imperative that we also get to understand what is the purpose that data is being processed for by having to be much closer to the business units. Now, there can be a second line of defense like risk management, which in fact needs to provide guidance and governance in terms of policy. But at the outset, there needs to be a privacy operations, which in fact can operationalize the policy into the grassroots of the organization. So I think the similar sense can be applied to digital as well as data, cloud computing, and risk management. So it's the right structure within the organization that in fact can get us the right return on investments. And coming from finance within HDFC, I think this is a greater question that in fact comes to us every day. What is the return on investment? Is it thrice? Is it 3x, 5x in the next 2 years if you are investing into cloud? If you're getting to manage data? I think these questions are quite imperative, Mahesh.
Thanks, Tejasvi, for sharing the view on how seamless experience can be provided through customer to data privacy, involving the business stakeholders, and governing the overall data. So, from a banking perspective, we have heard what Tejasvi is saying, but what about the insurance sector? So, I would share a little view about the insurance sector, being into the insurance, working for more than 20 years on various applications and technology. On data management, it's mostly how effectively we are managing our data. So once we start managing the data and make it fit for the purpose, the next activity or analytics can begin upon. And there are various analytical tools and various analysis which helps in getting the seamless customer, whether it is getting customer onboarded, whether it is related to renewing a customer, because in general insurance we have a 1 year cycle for a customer to renew it, unlike the life insurance which runs through a longer period. So renewing, a lot of analytics is required through propensity, through various bureaus. The information comes through the loyalty and the experience that a customer gives over the period of year. And secondly is on the servicing. When we talk about servicing, it's mostly about the claims, the fraud management, the fraud angle that needs to keep bothering us, whether it is motor, whether it is fire, or whether it is health. So with the increasing issues on the fraud, there are various analytics, but to make everything possible, we need a data to be used effectively. But does that makes a problem solved? No. We need to also ensure that the data that is available is in a position to do a lot of analytics, and to do that we require cloud computing. And at the same time, we need to ensure the governance of the data, as rightly mentioned by Tejasvi. If we don't govern the data, the new oil or the asset that we have, we would be in issues. So with the new regulations and other things which is coming up, which we'll be covering in the next questions as well, we need to be very this thing about ensuring that we don't do any data breaches. So these are various points that we would just add a word about the domain understanding on data management, cloud computing, and the risk perspective. Moving to the next question, given your role in data management and governance at HDFC Bank, how has the growth of cloud technologies impacted the data and digital strategy?
Well, in fact, I think I would, while I answer the question which you asked, at the outset, I will resonate with what you just said earlier. Data is a new oil, and the pace at which we manage data is going to help us with having to give us some intelligibility in terms of taking the right decisions, even at a C level or even at a grassroots at operational level. So at the outset, I think with the growth of cloud computing, we are able to scale storage much massively today. We are able to curate data, which in fact can come through every customer touch point. Now, thanks to the privacy law, we can minimize data, which is personal in nature. We can cut down on cloud costs when it comes to storage. But at the outset, through cloud computing and with the emerging technologies, we are able to process data much faster. We are also able to embed analytics, AI, generative AI, in terms of having to take real-time decisions, in terms of having to complete customer journeys digitally. So we have the capability, let's say today, as an industry, to be able to come up with an estimated income of a customer based on the city he or she lives in, based on other demographic parameters, the income, which in fact can be estimated, plays a role in terms of giving short credits. And this has been possible because of the processing power today that cloud computing provides at scale. And at the outset, I think certain risks which in fact need to be taken into consideration are privacy as well as security. Now, when it comes to the question specifically around how is cloud computing impacting digital and data strategies, at the outset, I think today we'll have to ask perhaps the audience a question: how many of you do have a data strategy?
Any question, anyone who would like to say about how many of us has a data strategy at an organization level? So one hand I can see.
Yeah, I think
That's
this is
where
where this is where we're getting to understand that while data is a new oil and cloud computing is in fact being invested into, how about having to create a science and formal function for data? Why is it so um, you know difficult for someone within India to be able to create a data function that obviously can take care of actively managing data and governing it? So that's the imperative that in fact I think the banks need to move towards. And at the outset, I think having to formalize a function for data, which in fact can be data governance, it helps in having to have sensing capabilities to the C level and the board. Now, we have seen world organizations like Enron or something like Polybag or BCCI, which is a bank, Merrill Lynch. Now, most of these organizations have gone downhill due to certain frauds as well as lack of intelligibility that their C level have stated. Now, with a strong regulatory framework in India with RBI, I'm assuming we are not going downhill with any of the banks out here. But at the outset, I think we have seen the evolution of corporate governance for the past 30 years. And at the outset, I think we have seen the evolution of data management and governance and cloud computing. So I think it is time for us to be able to formalize data management, to be able to manage data as a corporate asset. And this, in fact, will help us in terms of realizing the accurate value of data, either directly or indirectly through generative AI, as most of the earlier panelists talked about. And I think your thoughts will be helpful as well.
So the one thing I would like to repeat is about the data strategy. Almost we are talking from morning, we have been listening about a lot of digital adoptions, a lot of areas on AI, ML. But if we don't have a proper data strategy, then whatever we are talking is just a talk point, not the actual execution point. So my view is we need to have the way business strategy, the underwriting, the claim strategy, the operation strategy. A data strategy is very essential. And we at SBI do have a data strategy, not only for the current financial year, but I have a visibility of the next 3 years, what would be the strategy and where we would like to reach in the next 3 years. Unless and until we have the goal in our mind, we would not be able to reach where we want to. So that's the area and very key point that he has touched upon on the data strategy piece. From insurance perspective, if I have to put some lights there, it's about the insurance, the overall volume. When we talk about it, there is an increased volume and complexity of the data, what we have seen in the past few years compared to the last 1 year. There has been involvement of regulators, there has been involvement a lot of various digital footprints and a lot of information which we used to ask earlier versus now, and mandatory information that we are asking as of now makes a huge difference. So a lot of information is being asked upon on various platforms to ensure that the data captured, the data accuracy being on the better side, not only at the time of policy issuance but also at the servicing, because a lot of claims information, whether which hospitals, which the KYC information which comes through the discharge card or anything that we talk about, a lot of information is getting captured as of now, and using analytics, using those various ML model, things has to be worked upon. So a proper data strategy is a must, I believe. And the need for scalability and agility at the same time is the cost effectiveness. And hence, that's where the cloud computing will play a major role. Because if we go with a service level rather than an on-prem level, the serverless, the storage-less, and many other things will definitely help not only to save cost, but with the new privacy, with the new technology, the cloud partners that we have, things are getting stabilized, and a lot of computing, which was not possible on normal workstations that we used to have, is now possible to do it. So I believe that's where things are moving, and that's where the point are around. So moving to the next question, how do you see the data law impacting the organization, and what are your thoughts on the recent privacy law, which is Digital Personal Data Protection, which was launched in the Parliament in July 2023, and what are the steps that organizations take to be compliant on the same?
Yeah, that's a great question, in fact. In the view of the law, at the outset, I think the first step for any organization to be compliant with the recent privacy law is to do a privacy impact assessment to understand where is personal data of customers existing within the organization. And this can be done by having to take a sentiment-based check of your system SMEs or process SMEs to be able to say which schema, which table, which column does a mobile number of a customer exist. Now, while this is a sentiment-based approach to having to sense where personal data is, how much of a threat surface area does the organization have? To take a scientific approach to it, what I would suggest is to be able to invest into something like a catalog that'll have the capability to scan the data, to be able to say where the mobile number is being stored, where is it being traversed as multiple hops before it reaches an insight. At the outset, we can take a simple example of a digital journey. A customer might be filling up a credit card application online, and the card can be given away to him online. And at the outset, while he drops off in a journey, there is an outbound call center which gets a stream of information on why the customer dropped off. Now, there can be a physical journey or an assisted journey which can help the customer, in fact, to get a credit card of his choice or her choice. And at the outset, the streams of information around the customer drop off, which is reaching the analytics or the MIS team or the group, it needs to be assumed specifically for certain processing and purposing. And this can be possible when a catalog is able to sense how the data flows from the form, perhaps to a report that an outbound call center is able to access and assist the customer by calling. So I would say having to invest into something like a catalog, classifying data for privacy, and having to understand where data is flowing to will be the initial steps, while the next step will be quite prominent in terms of hiring a data privacy officer. Now, I think as organizations, with your corporate governance strategy and data strategy, it will be important to see whether you want to have the privacy officer in the first line, much closer to business, or in the second line, much closer to risk. At the outset, I think these are two aspects which organizations can focus on.
Very well said. And thanks for interpreting a little about the data law that he has mentioned about. Yes, there are, and if anyone is not aware, if a data breach happens, what would be the penalty? Anyone can just raise your hand and can say something about what was the penalty that has been put by the government if there is a data breaches has been seen. No one? So it's 250 crores. It's 250 crore if there is a breach seen. And how are we going to ensure that we are aligned with the vision of the government? So government has come up with what I have been understanding and we have implemented in our organization. There are two things which government has been behind all the insurance company. One is getting the account aggregator, wherein a consent of a customer is taken before sharing the information to other partners. And second is ABDM, which is Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. And where that's the place where an Aadhaar ID is getting captured. And if you are not aware about, there are 45 crores customers already who has an Abha ID. And from next month onwards, it is getting mandatory by all insurance company, by the regulators, that we have to give the Abha ID. And the benefit it can give to the customer who are loyal, who are non-fraudulent activity, there will be a price mechanism and many things which is going to come up. So why I am sharing this information is one of the area that we can prevent is through consent. So all the companies has to ensure the consent mechanism is available so that you are a little protected on the data breaches that can happen in future. Not only that, we need to also ensure that the necessary data security that is required, zero trust, and various other mechanism like data classification, managing the consent and providing data for portability as well as the erasure. So this is something which needs to be kept in mind before we work out on any other activity. So these are the key points on the data protection, digital personal data protection law as such. So coming to the closure, the summary points. Thanks, Tejasvi. I'd like to summarize what the audience says and what both of us also says. Data is the new oil. Thus, purify and make it fit for the purpose and beyond analytics, which the generative AI and many other things are going about. The best decisions are made with data, and only when the data is worked as a strategy, when the data is accurate and complete, consistent. Regulatory compliance is not an optional. It is a mandatory that we need to be aligned with. Data breaches can be costly and damaging. Cloud computing can be a great way to save money and improve the overall efficiency. With all these capabilities, which are important in this BFSI sector, to be able to get the right strategy and grow the company. So this is all from our side. I hope this would have given some insights to the team who are sitting here,